For a start, I have to say that my vision of Singapore is deep green, not yellowish green, no, brownish green. And it is a vision, but not a dream. Okay? A vision is based on a certain level of reality. Dream may be just an airy-fairy stuff. Now, with this vision of deep green, personally, I just cannot accept the idea that Singapore is a city-state. All right? It seems more like a myth than the real situation here at this stage of our national development. Singapore is definitely not a city-state as far as I'm concerned. We are a nation like any other nation in the United Nations. We have no special status in a minority class called the city-state country. We are definitely not a city-state, as Venice is a city-state. And therefore, we don't deserve any special treatment, right, as a minority group. Why did I say this? Well, there's a recent satellite study done by Cripps and NUS, dated 2011, over the last 10 years, based on satellite maps, which shows that Singapore is covered by 56% green areas. That is more than half of Singapore. True, we have a global city. I say have a global city. But we are not a global city. The whole of Singapore is not completely covered by urban structures, because 56% of Singapore is still green. We mean it's still undeveloped, all right? So we are not a global city, but we have a global city. And more than half of Singapore is still green, undeveloped, all right? Now, the interesting thing is that out of this 56%, 29% of this greenery is what the researchers call spontaneous greenery, which means to me wild greenery. Greenery that sprung up of its own accord by natural propagation, not planted, designed forests for humans. And of course, the rest of it, 27%, the others, are constituted by parks, public park, gardens, lawns, golf clubs. These are managed greenery. So 29 plus 27, total greenery is 56%. But the most important thing is there is 29% of wild greenery in Singapore. We have a backyard. In other words, we have a countryside. We are not totally 100% urban, all right? So I cannot accept the idea of Singapore as a city-state, all right? Now, unless, of course, it is a kind of a scheme that we want to implement. Right now, at this stage, all right, we have a countryside, and an extensive one. Unless we are hell-bent on urbanizing every corner of Singapore, which seems to be what is going on now. But it's about time for us to rethink such what's called relentless process of urbanization. Of course, we will become one, a city-state. Everywhere, everything is urban, right? Okay? Now, so I think we should not sort of think that we are a special country. We are like any other country, deserving special treatment, and so on. Now, we have, in 1995, we have ratified the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. So, like any other nation in the UN, right, we are obligated, should be upholding steadfastly, seriously, the commitments of this convention without any hee-hawing. that we are a city-state, tiny nation, all city, all right? We are equal to all other nations within the United Nations with equal responsibility. And one of the big responsibility is our, what they call, being partners in the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. So we should uphold it on equal terms with other nations. Now, the convention recently sort of stipulate that every nation should set aside 17% of land areas, terrestrial areas, for biodiversity conservation. Okay, from what we can see in the URA Master Plan 2010, the last one was 2013, we are only prepared, Singapore is only prepared to set aside about 9% of terrestrial area for conservation. Because the usual excuse, we are a small nation, a tiny red dot. We are a city-state, as if we don't have any wild green areas around. That's not true, given the satellite study. All right, 1/3, 29% is 1/3 of Singapore is still considered by wild green areas. And these wild green areas from nature societies, exploration, surveys, a lot of them have rich biodiversity. They can be roped in to expand this 9%, all right? We are prepared only for 9, or at most 10%. So we are short in how upholding this convention as a, ratifier, by at least about 7 to 8%. We are just halfway there. See, we could do more. All right, of course, there's a lot of talk about land scarcity. Usually, hey, can you please conserve this area? When you say it to any official, sorry, we are constrained by land scarcity. And this seems to be something that has been, it could be something that is, as far as I'm concerned, it's more like a mantra. You're like, is that really true? Has it any kind of sensible, reasonable, or even rational basis? All right. You encounter this everywhere. Nature Society has been trying to promote conservation every year. Since the mid-80s, Sungai Buloh, the success of Sungai Buloh, we've been pushing areas for conservation. Every time when you push an area and meet up with the authority, sorry, there is land scarcity in Singapore. I find this hard to accept. For the simple reason is that, I put it as a question. How can there be land scarcity when you have 1,500 hectares of land used for golf courses? Very simple. I cannot accept it once I know that 1,500 hectares of land devoted to golf courses. There are about 24 golf courses in Singapore. For a nation, it's called a tiny red dot. 1,500 hectares is 1.5 times the size of Pulau Ubin. Pulau Ubin is 1,000 hectares. This is 1,500. 1.5 times the size of Pulau Ubin. Huge area. And you know how many Ang Mo Kio can go into Pulau Ubin or into this 1,500 hectares? I leave it to you. Okay. So as long as there is this extent of golf courses, it doesn't make sense. All right. There is no reasonable basis for talking about land scarcity in Singapore. Of course, right now, of course, when the official talk to us about land scarcity, we always bring up to the notice that there is this amount of golf courses. And I think recently, in a way, they have listened to us. They have cut down 3 golf courses, deregistered, de-gazette 3 golf courses. All right.
Things like Keppel, I have the list.
Okay, anyway, doesn't matter. Keppel, Marina Bay, and so on will be delisted. But that only comes to about 166 hectares of land. It's hardly a dent into the 1,500 hectares. Very little. So that is why, because of this scarcity mantra doesn't go far. And I think I still will hold on to this deep green vision because there's a lot of nature area that can be roped in, and the excuse of land scarcity doesn't hold good. All right? Just a bit, okay. In the past, of course, we put forward areas for conservation and Marina South and all that. Every time we put forward, some of they have been, what they call, golf courses have sprung up. Despite the talk about landscape, golf courses have sprung up. The recent one, Marina Bay, Kranji Sanctuary, and so on. But, of course, there's also a lot of talk about city in the garden. All right, I don't deny, there's no doubt that the city in the garden approach is pretty good. And I have made what they call the quality of life. I mean, we have improved Singaporeans' quality of life in the urban landscape, plant green trees, attract the wildlife, and so on. That's pretty good. But it's about time for us to move beyond the city in the garden idea. And I was surprised, and now feels rather hopeful that the recent minister, Lawrence Wong, made a statement that we will be having a city in the forest in Tengah, which is a huge, vast tract of secondary forest. So that is a good sign, and I think we should move into this direction, the city in the forest idea, away from enough of city in the garden, and look more seriously into the city in the forest concept, all right, in the future. Thanks.